So I wanted to share this. This is the path through loss. And I think this is a really great illustration of, of one version of kind of a roadmap of the grief process. And there's a lot of different aspects of this. This comes from, um, citing the source from Earl Happ, who's in also the references. So there'll be references shared and resources shared as a follow-up. But the idea for this session and this topic of grief and loss came from conversations we've been having internally around through yoga care throughout the past 2 years during COVID, and just wanting to have a space to process grief and loss. For whatever has happened. I mean, many of us have lost friends, family, ways of being in the world through COVID. And, just we really wanted to offer this space and this time and this practice as one invitation to delve a little bit deeper into that healing together, healing individually, and just connecting with each other and ourselves. And also with what we've lost and who we've lost. So this actually in my social work training when I was in graduate school, over 10 years ago, I did an internship and did a specialization in loss, grief, death and dying, and did an internship at Kindred Hospital, helping families with grieving their loved ones that were in and out of chronic care and chronic long-term care and end-of-life care. Also was working with Horizon Hospice at the time. And this was one of the resources that I gathered during that time period, and thought, grief is a really windy road. And if we look at, the different, as we embark on the path of grief and we look at, the different kinds of emotions that come, from kind of this pre-loss, it can even start like before we lose the thing or the person or, go through the change. There's this pre-loss anticipation that brings up, a whole lot of anticipatory grief. And there's shock kind of once the loss sets in, lots of different emotions, confusion, forgetfulness. We kind of move through, you've heard the stages of grief maybe before, from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, like denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, depression, kind of, moving through all of these things. The hard times, I would probably draw some mountains, maybe, there's a little mountain, but bigger ones through this part of the process. And kind of, I would also, amend this by like a circular sort of windy path that just kind of moves around and around, because it's not a linear process, we know. But, ultimately we can, and maybe not all of us get to new beginnings, but there's the option of hope for new beginnings and living into the future. And the healing can come at any phase of this process. So just wanted to start with that framework of this roadmap of grief. And it's a completely individualized thing for everybody. And talking about kind of how we move through the process psychologically, physically, socially, emotionally, spiritually. And in particular ways that grief affects us all can depend on the type of thing that's lost. Speaking of, losing people, there's that sense of, if someone lived a good life, it might be easier to grieve, or a long life, or, young people dying, children dying can be, harder sometimes. Throughout COVID, there can be stigma attached to someone dying of COVID, or someone who was vaccinated or not, or the blame, like people didn't take care of themselves, or some of the complexities of why people died can really trigger different types of grief and can make things more complicated. So those are just some examples to name, but we want to here kind of hold space for for all experiences that anyone is going through and anyone wants to share. So with that, I'll stop the share and want to invite people to go around, if you can, and share kind of your name, kind of what brought you today. And if there's something that is present with you about grief or loss, or someone who's present with you, thinking over these past couple of years or recent times of your experience of grief and where you are in the process, as an intention setting for this practice that we'll go into next. So if you can pause the recording, please. So before we move into the practice, so if you have a yoga mat handy, a pillow or a bolster, please feel free to take a moment to go grab those props, and come back. If you have a block too, feel free to bring it, but it's not necessary. So I want this to be an accessible practice. And we will start when everybody comes back. So just take a few moments to gather the things together that you need, and also with awareness as you're gathering the props and the mat, just paying attention moment to moment, what's coming up for you as we're engaging in this process, even just what came up for you in the discussion, what's present with you. So take your time with that. And we'll start with seated breathing. So feel free to find a comfortable seat on your mat or in a chair or wherever you are. And if you're on a mat, find a comfortable seated position, maybe sit a little upright on a block or on the pillow, legs crossed if that feels good, or whatever's comfortable for you. If you're in the chair, having both feet planted on the ground with your knees above your ankles, and let's just roll the shoulders back a bit. And settle into the breath, tune into your breath. You can do this with gentle eyes softly open, just like fluttering your eyes, almost like they were going to close, just softening the eyes. Or you can do this with your eyes completely closed, whatever feels comfortable for you. Whatever you need, take care of yourself during this time. And check in with your breath. Notice where you're breathing. Is it in the belly? Is it in the chest? Is it somewhere in between? And I invite you to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And continuing, taking the next inhale into the belly, raising it to the heart, and exhaling, releasing from the heart, releasing from the belly. And try that again. Maybe a little bit deeper, maybe not. Really honoring what you need in this moment. And once you have a rhythm established, feel free to drop your hands on your knees or in your lap and continue breathing in that way. First, checking in with your physical body, scanning your body, all the muscles and joints and organs from head to toe. Noticing any places of tension, notice any places of releasing and openness. Non-judgmentally, with compassion. Next, I invite you to scan your mental body, your thoughts, your mind, just noticing what thoughts are there without attaching to them as best as you can, letting them float down the stream, just watching and noticing. And then checking in with your emotional body. What are you feeling deep down inside? Where do you feel that in your body? Again, noticing without engaging in it or feeding it. And finally, checking in with your spiritual body, whatever that means to you. Connecting with spirit, however you experience spirit in your body, within, surrounding you, and anywhere. And as we are here connecting with these 4 levels, I invite you to pick 1 or maybe 2 things that are most present with you around what you shared in the beginning, around what you may be grieving or anticipating a loss of, or feeling into something that's really present with you, having an expectation of no expectations, of it changing any, of healing, fixing in any way, just being with the experience. And if an intention arises, I invite you to connect to that intention, or sankalpa, or resolve for something to be like it is so. For example, that could be I release the pain. I move through grief. I am healed. So find something in your own words or in your own experience that feels right for you in this moment. And repeat it in your mind or out loud to really anchor this experience into the practice today. And when you're ready, slowly come back to this present moment, slowly opening your eyes if they were closed. And we'll find our way to the mat. You can do this in a chair if you'd like as well, but we'll start in supported child's pose. So finding your way to the mat. And you can take the pillow, if you need a blanket too, or some padding for your knees. If you have other pillows handy, feel free to grab those. But you can take your knees on the side of the pillow and kind of straddling the pillow here, and then coming down into a child's pose with the feet. The feet can be apart or together, and just setting the hips back and resting the chest on the pillow or the bolster. You can take your hands together, palms on top of each other, and resting the forehead on the backs of the hands. And release the shoulders. Let the shoulders melt into the floor as you stay in child's pose here, supported. I invite you to stay connected to your breath here. And breathing deeply into the hips, into the low back. And as we're here in this supported child's pose, I invite you to call upon one of the 5 niyamas in yoga, one of the five 5 practices, Ishvari Pranidhana, which can be translated to dedicate, devote, or surrender. So I like to think of this practice as laying it all at the foot of God, however you understand God, or spirit, or true self, or unchanging reality. So whatever we're holding on to, whatever we're feeling during this time, we're offering it, we're laying it all at the foot of God. We're surrendering our individual ego identity to become our own higher self, to become God, that divinity, the true self, or unchanging reality. And again, that may sound like a lofty thing, and these are not goals in the sense of we have to achieve this during this practice or during this pose. This is really about the intentionality of that prostration, of that surrender, and seeing what comes up. You know, all of this is invitational. So let's breathe and surrender for a few more moments, releasing any tension in your body, surrendering and letting the pillow, letting God, letting the universe hold you here in its loving embrace. And then slowly making your way up, we'll remove the pillow and just set it aside. Pillows, wherever you are. And move into a cobra pose. So coming onto the floor, placing the hands beside you. And there's multiple ways to work with this. But placing the hands beside you and the elbows underneath the feet behind you, kind of parallel. You can touch your toes and let your hips kind of roll outward, your legs roll outward, resting your chin on the floor. And just taking a breath or two here in this prone position, breathing into the backs of your lungs. That can be really cleansing for the backs of the lungs. And the lungs can, in some systems, are associated with sadness or grief. And by breathing into the chest, breathing into the lungs, we can cleanse the sadness, release. And we'll start out dynamically, so breathing and moving rather than a static pose. And as we inhale, we're going to really relax the pelvis, relax the low back, and just press into the floor, gently coming up to whatever level is comfortable for you, drawing your shoulders back and down, lengthening the neck, kind of gazing out in front, and then exhaling down. Gentle, slow movements dynamically, and noticing, scanning those 4 levels, your 4 bodies, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and then inhaling back up, pressing, opening the heart on the inhale, exhaling down. So continue this at your own pace. And if you're arms are having trouble or your wrists, you can also do this in a Sphinx pose where you're just resting on your elbows here and just inhaling up and down. So going at your own pace here, gentle movements. You may also experiment, remembering everything's an experiment. Experiment with staying here, drawing the shoulders back, staying up in your cobra or up in your Sphinx, and drawing the shoulder blades back towards each other, opening the heart even more. And check in with yourself. What are you opening your heart to in this moment? And stay with that question, either statically in this pose, just staying here, or dynamically again, you know, exhaling down, inhaling back up, pressing the pubic bone, the front of the pelvis into the floor as you rise, and coming back down. A few more iterations of this at your own pace. Staying with that question, what are you opening your heart to in this moment? And then next time you're down, just again tuning in, staying connected, noticing maybe there's points where you want to run from what you're feeling. That's something to notice as well. Again, in a non-judgmental, self-compassionate way. Staying as present as is available for you. So we'll come into a reclined twist. One way to do that is to come back up into a, up into your cobra pose, and just take your right arm, kind of slide it under the left, and gently come into this twist. If you have your pillow handy, you can kind of use that if you'd like. You use it between your legs or your bolster, or you can kind of hold it here. You want some neck support, maybe find another pillow that's available for you, or your block can go here. And staying here in this kind of side movement here, just resting on the pillow for a moment. And feel the juiciness of that embrace. Just lie here, supported by pillow, supported by God, supported by the universe. And still with that surrender that we started with in child's pose. What can you surrender to? What can you continue to open your heart to, like we just did? And here, as we move into a gentle twist, again, dynamically, you can place the hands on top of each other and then glide them across the body, opening, letting the head and neck follow on the inhale. Take a breath here after an exhale. And then coming back, gliding, really reaching that hand past the other palm. And continuing at your own pace, really releasing and opening. Twists are really good for detoxing and like wringing the stress and tension out of your body. Notice what can you release. As you move, what are you holding on to anywhere in your body? Really tuning into what's moving here. One thing I'm aware of that I recently learned in the Social Engaged Yoga Network session on reproductive justice that we had last month. It's about the connection between the pelvic floor and the jaw in Hyfte class. The connection anatomically between those two places where we can hold tension. And check in with those places in yourself. And at the bottom of your spine, the top of your spine, from your pelvic floor to your jaw. What can you release? And maybe on the next one, you stay in this reclined twist with the arms open. Maybe the head rolls all the way over to the left. And breathe into that heart space. Breathe into the hips, into the jaw. If we were doing a longer practice today, I might invite us to stay here for 3 to 5 minutes, just melting into the floor, feeling that support and that release. But for now, we'll gently switch sides. So taking yourself back over to Cobra pose and taking your left arm this time, gliding it under and taking the pillow to the other side or the bolster, resting your right knee across it, making sure you have head and neck support, and trying this on the other side. So first just resting here, allowing yourself to embrace the pillow and feel the juiciness of this embrace and the surrender. Deepening your breath. And then begin the dynamic movement. Inhaling, reaching forward, exhaling, allowing yourself to twist and open, and then coming forward again. So continuing in this way, gliding, stretching, and releasing. And noticing your breath as we inhale and open, and then coming back. Really giving yourself that gentle touch and gentle self-massage as you glide. And maybe on the next one, staying open, staying with the arms wide. Letting your head come off the pillow if that's more comfortable. Breathing and releasing. How can you honor what you have lost or who you have lost? as you release whatever you're holding on to. And then we'll slowly come out of this, just coming onto our back shoe. And with the knees bent, allow yourself to stay here, just flattening the back, making any adjustments you might need. If you have your block or your pillow handy, we'll try a supported bridge pose. So with the supported bridge, we'll take the pillow or the block, just placing it right under the sacrum. And you want the block, and you'll find the top of your sacrum is around at your pant line. So you find these kind of bony prominences right around your back and place the block where the top of the block is aligned with the top of your sacrum. Okay. Again, you can use the pillow there too. So for a softer place. But just starting at the low place of the block. And you can also adjust it to a little higher on the longer end. Or if you have a 2 blocks or a wooden block or something a little firmer, you can also come up on the long end of the block as well. But, start low, start easy. And you can place the hands on your belly. The feet are parallel. The back of your head is flat on the floor. And allow anything here as you breathe to kind of drain out of your body. So imagine from the knees to the hips, to the belly, to the heart, to the shoulders, to the head, out the crown of the head. Just allowing this kind of reverse blood flow a bit to drain whatever you might be feeling. Feelings of grief can show up, in all of these levels of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. On the physical level could be stomach pains, could be tension in your muscles, could be digestive problems, could be a whole number of things. Mentally, could be negative thinking. Grief could color everything that you're thinking about that's happening now, or future tripping, kind of catastrophizing, imagining the worst outcome. Like it may never get better, or you'll never go back to feeling happy or joy again. Just notice if any of those things are coming up. It could be anxieties, separation anxiety, fearing that you may separate from what you may lose in the future, let alone what might bring up anxieties about things that have happened in the past. Could be that sadness, depression, anger, irritability, like you're on a short fuse.
And so many things can just add up. With each loss, it can bring up things that were unresolved from the prior loss. Just allow that to be as it is, to the extent possible. And spiritually, it can bring up all sorts of questions. Existentially, like, what am I here for? What am I doing on this planet? How does life make sense after this person or this situation is gone? How do I reorient myself to this new reality when a part of myself feels like it's gone forever? How can God allow this to happen? When will it ever end? All sorts of things can come up for us as we grieve. Our whole life can be thrown out of balance. And sometimes what can really help amidst all the grief storms is dropping in, as my Zen Buddhist teacher says, dropping anchor. Just like you're in a boat on a stormy sea. Your mind can be wanting to run and get away from the storms and the lightning and the thunder and all that's swirling around you. But when you're out at sea, the best thing you can do is to drop anchor and find that groundedness as the storms are tossing you about. So each time that you encounter the pummeling of the storms, the raging of the sea, each time, because it will happen, the storms will come and go as long as we are in a body on this planet. They will come and go. Dropping anchor like this, like here and now, supported, staying put, breathing, and witnessing what comes up. Maybe that can give us the space we need to get through this seemingly insurmountable obstacle of this moment. Sometimes the only way out is through. So allowing ourselves to complete wherever you're at in that moment. Opening your eyes if they were closed. Gently lifting the hips, removing the block or the pillow. Maybe taking a few dynamic ways with this bridge to massage the spine, pressing the hands into the floor as the hips come up and then back down. A couple of times, allowing yourself to do that, allowing the grief, allowing the feelings to wash away under the bridge.
So I invite us to slowly make our way into standing. We're going to come into a warrior pose here. So through this warrior pose, we can face even more, kind of face what we can. So spreading the feet a little bit wide, a little wider than hip width. The front foot will take the right foot forward. And the left foot at an angle, maybe a 45-degree angle, or a little bit wider actually. Kind of warrior two here. So we'll have the hips facing the space between the legs. And slightly bending the forward knee. So the knee is over the ankle. And the back foot is solid into the ground. The arms come up, shoulders back and down. And just experiment with this, bringing the hands in and out a couple times, in and out here. And then gazing across out into the yonder in front of you. You can also do this in a chair, kind of seated in between your legs or sitting on a chair. So if you prefer a more restorative version of this. And then as we're in this warrior pose, grounding the feet down. Feel into the strength of the earth supporting you, of God holding you here. You know, they say time heals all wounds, and you could also say that time plus the courage to face what we feel can heal all wounds. Noticing if this warrior pose invites you to have a bit more courage to face whatever's coming up. And also, no judgment if you don't. No judgment if you are not feeling courageous and just need to curl up in a ball and cry. That's okay too. This is really about honoring where you are in this practice, in this moment. And slowly straighten that forward leg and then just pivot to the other side for your warrior two on the other side. Again, kind of the hips come forward, your thighs externally rotate, and bending that forward knee, letting the arms float up. You can kind of let them fly or flutter like a butterfly, like that new life that is ahead of you, that new life that is in this moment. What if everything existed in this moment? That new life that you're looking for or maybe wanting to move through from where you are. What if that all exists in the absolute here? What if that's possible? And breathe into the space. Breathe into your warrior two. Find that courage to hold you, to hold all that is coming up for you. Softening the jaw, softening the pelvic floor. And feel how that softening actually helps support the pose. You know, sometimes we feel like we need that tension, we need to hold on and squeeze everything so tight. And yes, that can give us strength and strengthen our muscles and our pose. And sometimes releasing, when you release the pelvic floor, release the jaw, release the shoulders down, you can feel the natural ways that your body support you? What if that support that you're looking for out there or somewhere else is here, right here within you? That God or divinity or universe out there is also in us and part of us. May it be so. Let's straighten that forward leg and do whatever your body needs to do to recalibrate as we come back down to the mat. Making your way gently back to the mat. And let's bring the pillow or bolster right behind you, right up to the base of your sacrum here. And also place the feet against each other, the soles of the feet against each other, like butterfly legs. You could also take a belt, if you had a belt or a strap, around the back of your sacrum and then around the tops of your hips. We're not going to do that today, but that's a variation you could do. And again, you could stay in these much longer than we are today. It's just a flight or sampling as we're going through this. So we're going to slowly come back and gently come down, supporting your head and neck. So make any adjustments that you need to so that your head is neutral as possible. Let your arms kind of roll out, draw your shoulders under in this bound angle pose, reclining. And tuck your, take your glutes and kind of tuck your butt a little bit forward and down so that you don't want as much of a deep curve here. So you want to kind of scoop a little bit just to take some pressure off. And breathe into the chest and the heart space. We'll go, find the breath, come into the belly, into the chest, into the heart, and open, releasing. Again, just breathing. You can do this with eyes softly gazing towards the ceiling. Taking a few breaths here. And deepening that breath. So imagining really that breath like we did at the beginning with one hand on the heart, one on the belly. Inhale into the belly. Raise the breath to the center of the chest and all the way to the heart and collarbones. And then releasing it in reverse order. Out the collarbones, out the chest and heart, out the belly. Understandably that this pose can be a very vulnerable pose to be in. And again, checking into those 4 levels, the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And take care of yourself, notice what you need. Sometimes it can feel good to place your hands, keep your hands on your belly, or keep that one hand on belly, one on chest or heart during this pose. Really feel into what you need here. Maybe the hands on the inner thighs to just gently help the gravity open and release. Trust your gut. Notice, again, what are you releasing here?
What are you opening yourself to? Possibilities of. Softening the jaw, softening the hips and pelvic floor. It was Helen Keller who said something to the effect of, there's only, you can see our truest light like only through the dark times. When we see our own light kind of coming through the cracks in a stained glass window, for example. So in these times when we experience darkness, how can we allow the cracks of light to come through? And slowly come up from that and remove the pillow again. And I'm just going to demonstrate the next one where we can do it without the wall. But I had planned for us to do kind of legs up the wall. Just in the interest of time, I'll just demonstrate it. And we can lift our legs just here on the mat rather than finding a wall. But if you want to do this later for your own practice, and again, you can stay for 3 to 5 minutes or longer. But let's lift the legs and kind of drain. This is our last pose before corpse pose, Shavasana. Just lift the legs and maybe hold behind them, and allowing us to further kind of drain the legs, drain the feelings, drain those 4 levels. I'm just going to release and let go. We'll stay here for just a couple minutes, releasing here, releasing. If you had a strap or something, you could kind of hold it around the backs of your legs. But definitely having the wall support really helps to lean your legs up against the wall. Breathing, releasing here. Keeping your breath long and fluid, and slow and deep. And then we'll slowly lower down. You can take a more active way to lower down for Shavasana. by engaging your glutes and lowering the legs, or you can bend your knees and pop them down and kind of walk them out. So whatever's speaking to you in this moment. And you can place the pillow underneath your knees here. And if you have a blanket to cover yourself with, or whatever you need, maybe a blanket underneath your head. A pillow could be nice underneath your head, but you also don't want your head like kinked with your neck like this. So if you have a really flat pillow or a blanket folded, just support your head, support your neck, whatever you need to feel cradled and comfy as we release in corpse pose. So allow yourself to be comfortable here in a way that is restorative. Allow yourself to relax. As we scan again the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. Allow yourself to be here, to release everything that was coming through in the practice. Just allow it to come through. And thinking about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there are 5 root causes of suffering: ignorance of the truth, egoism, attachment, aversion, and fear of death. And particularly thinking about the grief process, attachment can be a very difficult thing that creates a lot of suffering. What we're attached to, we grieve most profoundly and suffer most greatly. And the pain of grief is the price we pay for loving the way that we do, loving people, loving our life as it is. So detachment from what was lost can be really challenging, but a necessary way to move through the grief, to integrate what was lost into our present and future life. Sigmund Freud said that the life force energy, that libido, is reinvested into our life's purpose or another goal or person in the future, which is one way to work with grief. In yoga, we look at our prana, or the life force. And from a yoga standpoint, we can look spiritually at, how can we practice non-attachment? How can we love with non-attachment? It's a very tricky thing and very hard to do, which is why it's called a practice. But I think it doesn't mean that we love people or life any less. We can do it in a way that we're not holding onto it, but holding it with open palms, knowing that everything is impermanent and that the winds of time and winds of change can in an instant blow it all away, beyond our control. So as we're here in corpse pose, which in a way is the ultimate
grief pose where, what if this was your last pose, this last moment on the planet? You were on your deathbed, you're here. Knowing this, that any moment could be our last. How will you spend your time on this planet? Knowing that we're all going to die and everything is impermanent. There's nothing to solve in this moment, nothing to think about. No need to answer that question now. Just allow yourself the space to be for the next few minutes until we come back. I invite you to slowly wiggle your toes, gently move your legs, windshield wiper, your ankles, gently wiggle your fingers, rolling your wrists and your arms, gently rocking your head from side to side, allowing yourself to hug your knees into your chest, and you're rolling up into a little ball and rocking from side to side. As you roll over to one side, staying here for a moment, honoring the work you did today in this practice, honoring yourself for showing up. As you gently press yourself up into sitting, facing forward. Bringing your hands into prayer. And just listening deeply to this poem. Grieving. It is as individual as a fingerprint, as unpredictable as a summer storm, as rocky as a roller coaster, and as pervasive as fine dust covering every inch of us. It is called grief. When our loved one dies, grief is born in us, confusing our mind, weakening our body, assaulting our senses, and wounding our spirit. It will be our constant companion for a time not known. We must welcome it, endure it, understand its importance, share it with those who love us, and learn from it. From grieving, we can learn that we are strong, that people are good, and that they want to help, that time is our ally, and that our life will one day return to us with all the joy that now eludes us, and a heightened awareness of its ultimate mystery. But mostly, we will learn that the depth of our grief is merely a reflection of our God-given humanity and its awesome capacity of love. Ron Grease. Thank you all for coming today, and blessings on your journey as we go forward. Namaste. If we could stop the recording, please.